everyone wants to be loved. At least that's what society wants to say. And I don't necessarily disagree, but I have a bit of a different view on it. Good evening, everyone. I'm Selen, Salvador, and I'm Aro-Ace. That's something I wouldn't have been able to say even just a year ago. And when I talk about being Aro-Ace, the next question that comes is, what's that? What does it mean? So Aro-Ace means that I'm someone in the spectrum who experiences little to no attraction, whether romantic or carnal. And one thing about me is that my biggest fear is marriage. The other thing is my next biggest fear is dying alone. And Selen exists within that tension. How can you be afraid of marriage if you also fear dying alone? Isn't it the script of society that the next big step for an adult is to fall in love, to find someone to marry, even if you are homosexual, bisexual, or even if you're queer? There is never a space for anything in between. You're either in this, heterosexual, or maybe queer, but not in the way that I am. Imagine knowing that you're queer but still feeling invisible within the community. Queer yet not queer enough. Monstrous but not in the way that people will describe as such. It's a language that people have used to describe people in our community, yet I find it resonating within me. Ang ironic nga for Aro-Ace people, our flag is primarily composed of gray. What does it mean that in that rainbow, we still exist in that liminal space, in that shades of gray? When I was young, I already knew, perhaps, that I was Aro-Ace, but not in those terms exactly. Because as a Filipino, even in the Western sphere, they don't really have a space for Aro-Ace individuals. You can be queer, but it has to be in color. You have to exist within that rainbow because what are you if not it? And this might come with a unique freedom. I'm straight passing, but what does it mean for me in the future? What does it mean for my freedom as a person if I can exist without discrimination, perhaps, or as they call it normally, but not as who I really am? And as a kid, I rationalized it as, pwede na yung alay, because I don't have to exist in that space, perhaps to be valid, but also because queer is always synonymous with suffering. And that's wrong, but it's the view that I had because there was no space for me anyway. Why would I put myself in harm's way if I could exist as I am? But as I grew up, I realized that freedom is silence and that silence is no freedom at all. That freedom, perhaps as you might call it, of being straight passing, of being a person who does not have to experience persecution, is not the way that I want to live. Because being queer, after all, does not have to be synonymous to that persecution. And being here and being part of erasing that invisibility, we come a long way forward. Because in my stay in college and even before that, I have learned that being queer is also about the community. It's about love is love, but love also as liberation. It means that there is a future for me that isn't just merely tolerable, but something that I can look forward to. Yes, one of my biggest fear has always been marriage and then the other dying alone. But there's a queer future that has neither of those. There's a queer future that isn't being alone or being trapped in a marriage with a man or a woman, because that's what it is for me, being trapped. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but those are not for me. And by being here, I hope to be part of that step forward, not only of welcoming queer, rather Aro-Ace people into this space, but also that saying That in saying that, I will impart that for my truths are certainly not something that's easy to live by. And it will bring me hurt, it will bring me discomfort, but I'll live by them anyway.